Last week we talked about the sewer cover, manhole cover trading cards that were being scalped online. And it shows the depth to which Japan as a culture, that collecting culture, the Pokemon, all this kind of stuff, it's just deeply embedded in the culture that you make cards, you do these kind of things, and they're actually relatively successful. But it turns out you can do it with almost anything, because there's a town that has decided to make Oji-san trading cards. Now, Oji-san, they translate as middle-aged man. I translate as old man, but that really just depends on your definition of middle-aged. To me, middle-aged is going to be in your 40s, because you're probably only going to live to your 80s. I think a lot of people extend middle age into like the 50s and 60s. Now you're old. Just give it up. I have my guys I know, they're in their like late 30s and 40s and stuff, and they're trying to like still claim to be cool. I'm sorry, man, you're not cool. If you're over 30, you're not cool. That's just how it is. And they're trying so hard. It's like, no, let that part of your life go. You're not cool anymore. The interesting part, so you can get like Oji-san farmer, Oji-san fireman, Oji-san police officer, Oji-san soba noodle shop chef. The interesting part is that within this community, those are real people. Now, most of these guys are retired. So again, pushing the definition of middle-aged, as far as I'm concerned, if you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, you're not middle-aged. I'm sorry. I guess in Japan, if you intend to live to 120, 60 could technically be middle-aged, but I don't buy it. The cards are real people. So there is a retired fire chief who lives in the community. You can get his card. And these kids are trading the cards, and they're like, look, I have Police Chief Oji-san autographed, and he's showing it off to his friends, which is in a weird way kind of cool, because I always think like if you can meet the real people who do the thing, that is kind of cool. So if you could meet, like you collect the cards and you get this really powerful cards, and then you meet that guy, you meet that Oji-san in real life, that actually is pretty interesting. This was created by a community center, and it's like these guys, they donate to the community. So like the retired, I think it was a retired fire chief, he like drives older people around, or maybe a retired cop. He like gives back to the community now that he's retired. He drives people who can't drive their cars anymore. So he'll like essentially an old person taxi service for free, because it keeps him out. He helps other people. He's helping his community. And so they wanted to kind of pay it back, and they made these cards. They make 40 cards a day. No, they make 50 cards a day. A complete set of cards is 40 cards. So if you get all 40, you have a complete set. And I mean, they might make more and more cards if this actually gets more and more popular. But kids are showing an interest, and they're going by the community center. They're kind of talking to people. They're seeing older people. They're interacting with them in a positive way. So this is actually like a huge success. They are hand cut by staff. So you have staff members at this community center who are making these cards, I guess printing them out and cutting them all day. I hope not every day, but regularly, to make at least one set of cards every day. 3 cards cost 100 yen. 6 cards cost 500 yen, but you get 1 prism finish card. I have no idea what that means, but I'm assuming it's special, like a holographic version or a laminated version or something like that. Fetishists cried out all in one voice with sadness and pain and dismay, as the world has now taken a shift. Although really the real world doesn't cater to them as much as they'd like. From this April, police officers, female police officers specifically, will not have the option to wear skirts. Now, in real life, female police officers in Japan have not been wearing skirts for a very long time, or at least very few of them do, because if you're out in the street, you're out in patrol, you actually have to chase someone down. The skirt is not the most functional piece of clothing. So they're not going to have to wear skirts anymore, because they're not going to be skirts available. And my first thought was like it's the fetish guys, like the guys who collect uniforms. There's a lot of uniform fetishness is in Japan. And they're all based around uniforms. It's like the stewardess uniform, the schoolgirl uniform, the police officer uniform. You'll see Halloween costumes as police officer, and it's an incredibly short skirt and handcuffs and a hat. And that's about it. I guess everything at Halloween is just slutty version. You're still going to be able to have that. You just, in real life, there will be no equivalency, because the cops are all going to be wearing pants. This summer, they've introduced a new breathable polo option for the shirt. We've seen a lot of changes to how police act and are treated in Japan. Was it last year or 2 years ago? They were allowed to drink on duty, which you would think is a really normal thing to be able to do, but they're out in the hot sun in the summer in Japan, and they couldn't get drinks because they thought that looked unprofessional. So what they had to do was go back to the police station, change their clothes, plain clothes, go to the convenience store, buy some drinks, go back to the police station, change their clothes, and then go back out and do what they were doing. Stupid. Because what's wrong with having a police officer come into a convenience store and buy a drink and actually drink it? Because it is a billion degrees outside. We've just had a sudden spring. Like a week ago, last time I filmed, I was probably wearing a sweater. I am barely keeping up. I have to probably take off my light jacket off soon and just be wearing a t-shirt. It's so warm today. And then next week, it's going to be cold again. It's just flipping back and forth. But it's nice that they're starting to treat police officers not like machines, but more like people. The thing I didn't know, which was really interesting, is they used to have gender-based insignia. So for their rank on their uniform. So you would have like a sergeant, an insignia for a male sergeant, and this insignia for a female sergeant were actually different insignias, which I found very, very strange because the rank is the same. It's a weird thing. So I practice judo. I think I've made that clear many, many times. In judo, there's the belt system. So we just talk about the black belt. A female judoka, person who practices judo, who has a black belt, the black belt actually has a stripe on it, a white stripe through the middle, to designate they're a woman, despite the fact that it doesn't really matter. I always found that weird, but I've actually noticed in recent years, a lot of the girls are just wearing a regular black belt. I have no complaints. I think it's a rank. It has nothing to do with gender. So why it would be differentiated, it didn't make sense to me in the first place.
You know, there's going to be someone yelling about how their taxes are going to them to be policing and not buying water or tea or whatever. Unfortunately.
This was in Japan. This was a propriety thing. Like people who are working should not be hanging out at convenience stores and drinking. So I think the negative impression was coming from the idea that maybe the cops are slacking off. Not that they didn't deserve tea or water. It was that they weren't working, but you can't be chasing criminals all day, every day, just because that's not how that works. So I think you do have a point. There is going to be a small segment of people who just complain, and they're going to complain that these guys are allowed to have drinks. But I think the majority, this actually was spawned like 4 years ago. There was a picture that went viral in Japan, and it was either 2 Canadian or 2 American police officers, and they both had like Starbucks, and they were drinking out in sunglasses, hanging out with people and just talking, like doing essentially community work, not necessarily running down a criminal all the time like they do on TV, doing the actual job of being a police officer. These guys, it sparked up like, is this okay? Is this allowed? They're working. They shouldn't be doing this. And like a lot of people were like, dude, it's hot. They're having like drinks. They're just staying hydrated. They're drinking coffee because they've been working for 8 hours, whatever. The back and forth was very interesting. And I actually think that viral post sort of impacted the Japanese mentality to be like, these are human beings who need water in the summertime. So I think you're right, but hopefully not. In a weird way, I'm hoping you're not right, because people realize that these are actually human beings who need liquids. Tsushima City Shrine. So Tsushima City is on Tsushima Island, and you may have heard of Tsushima Island if you've actually played the video game Ghost of Tsushima or you're into video games. It was very popular, and it brought a lot of tourists to this area because people wanted to see the place where the video game took place. That's kind of cool. You get tourism off a video game. They didn't spend any money for this like free advertising. That's pretty cool. But it has also caused problems. We have a lot of nuisance streamers. We have the over-tourism, a lot of issues with tourism in Japan. Tsushima Island is not excluded from that just because it was made popular by a video game. They released a statement on their Instagram. A foreign tourist committed a severe and unforgivable act of disrespect. Now, they don't say what the act was. I found 6 versions of the story. All of them had the statement and not what they actually did. There was some supposition. Tsushima Shrine has not had an easy time with the tourism. It's easy to judge both ways though. I know the tourists are bad, but I think Tsushima might not be I think the Tsushima staff at the shrine might not be handling it very well. They've had problems with people yelling and getting violent with the staff. They've had disruptive behavior, which I guess yelling and getting violent with the staff is pretty disruptive. The shrine will no longer allow visitors at all. So the only people who can go into this shrine are local parishioners, so people who live in the city, or people who are Shinto worshipers. Now, that's a very difficult thing to check because it's not like you carry a card or have some identification to indicate that you are a Shinto worshiper. You are not allowed to take any photos, and there will be no live streaming on the temple grounds. So this is pretty strict. Now, these guys have gotten pretty strict in the past. Back in 2020, they banned foreigners, but then they eased up when that post went viral. So we're not allowed any foreigners to join to come visit our shrine. But then everyone's like, that's actually biased, it's racist, it's against the law in Japan, it's illegal to do that kind of thing. So if you're going to ban people, you can't ban just foreigners. But their point of view was, it's just the foreigners who are coming to visit here who are causing trouble. In 2024, they banned Koreans, which I would say is even worse than just banning foreigners as a broad kind of thing. They banned Koreans after a group of them smoked and spit and ridiculed the staff. So they had a bad experience with Koreans. They're just like, no more Koreans are allowed in our shrine. So whatever happened recently is just another version of this. And they're like, maybe we want to ban this group. They seem to be really quick with the ban hammer, which I'm kind of on board with. Like, if people are going to cause trouble, don't let those people in. But then, of course, because it's sort of open to the public, anything you do is considered racism or a bias, which is true. And so you're not allowed to do that. So they're just like, you know what? No more visitors. You have to either be a Shinto worshiper or a local to come in and visit. I don't know. I don't know what happened to set them off this badly, but they seem to have been set off a bunch of times in the past and set up different bans, which makes me think maybe they overreact. It's very hard to tell. The thing is, the other side of this is in 2021, there was a typhoon and it knocked over a torii gate, those big red, very sort of iconic gates in Japan. Fans of the video game Ghost of Tsushima and Sucker Punch, the company that made the video game, raised $260,000 to rebuild the torii gate and parts of the shrine that were damaged during the typhoon. So they've kind of gotten positive stuff from this video game coming out and making their island kind of a point to visit. But they've also had, now we're having all the trouble with the tourism. I want to know specifically what was actually done so I can judge whether or not they're overreacting. But it seems like the staff and the people there aren't really big fans of interacting with people anyways, don't know how to manage crowds, don't know how to manage tourists. And so them just blocking it off probably is just better for everybody. We get lots of stories about power harassment. I get a story and it happens again and again and again. And after a while, I'll ease off on it because there's nothing to say about it. But when it comes to power harassment and the variety of harassments they have in Japan, it's always interesting to see like what actually constitutes the definition of power harassment. So this was a section chief was glaring at subordinates during meetings. So they couldn't explain themselves very well, or they weren't, doing as good a job as he would have hoped. And he was glaring at them. So just staring at them displeased. And that apparently is I guess power harassment isn't a single thing. So that's it. Any one of these harassments that you break down into, it's like different pieces. Each piece doesn't seem that bad. So like a guy staring at me because he doesn't like how good my explanation is, that doesn't seem too bad. I mean, that just seems like, oh, my boss is pissed at me because I'm not doing my job to his satisfaction. They did put slamming his desk. So I don't know what that means, like taking the drawer and slamming it shut, slamming the top of the desk with his hands, something like that. He was hit with a temporary pay cut of 10%. Now, his defense was, I have a loud voice and a Hakata accent dialect, and that may have made it sound harsh. So I don't know enough about the different dialects. So the Hakata dialect apparently sounds very harsh in the Japanese ear. So he's saying that the way I talk, my subordinates or the people who work with me, they're taking it the wrong way. But the bit I find interesting, this is actually doing Ninja News Japan and dealing with these kind of statements and defenses has made me realize what people do naturally, and it's a diversionary tactic. So they're saying you were glaring at people, you were slamming stuff, you were shouting at them. These are all power harassment. He's saying, I have a naturally loud voice and I speak in a dialect, which means you're misinterpreting it. But your way of speaking does not impact slamming the desk. Your glaring at people has nothing to do with your accent, that kind of stuff. So they've made a series of claims, like you did A, B, C, D, and he goes, yeah, but I do J. And that's why everyone is misinterpreting what I'm doing as power harassment. So that's something to keep in line when you actually maybe get into a conflict with another person. When you are talking about a thing, they will start talking about something else and try to ease themselves away. Like, I do this, and so therefore you're misinterpreting it, but you're actually not talking about the thing. Stay on target, stay on point. That's how you win an argument. And when people start deflecting like this, they've already lost the argument. If all you have to do is say a statement I've actually made a bunch of times, maybe not a statement, but is I say something, the person defends himself, and I go, notice how you didn't answer the question I asked, or you didn't deal with the topic I brought up? And that's because what they're doing is some sort of diversionary tactic to try to get out of the argument. He berated his employee by hitting the desk with a pen. So I just get it. Hitting it with a pen. How hard is that? I don't know. There was a traffic stop. A guy had driven a car into a traffic light pole. So he's either on his phone and distracted or drunk. That's the only reason you drive into a pool, is because you're not actually looking at the road. So he was distracted. The police show up. They start questioning the man. The man says, "I don't care anymore." And he punches the policeman in the head. I don't know why. That story has no details or anything to it. I just think it's funny, this guy declaring, "I don't care anymore," and then punches a policeman and gets arrested because, he had to have been drunk. I'm going to cut that story out. That was not useful. Sukiya is one of those very popular chain restaurants that I will not go to. It's not particularly bad. If I'm going to spend money on food, I want to get good food, and it's just fine. It's not even, I just never would care. There's a lot of foreign people come to Japan and they like to go to the chain restaurants like Koko, Ichiban, and Sukiya and stuff. And I actually never have enjoyed any of those, because it's like, if you're going to go out for food, go out for at least mediocre food. This is like lower than that. I'm very pretentious when it comes to food. Unintentionally, I don't see of myself as a very pretentious person overall, but it seems like I'm very mid. I think mid has become an insult, whereas my view is like there's high end, mid, and low, and I'm always going to go mid. I actually don't like high end food either. It's like if you said, let's go to this really expensive Michelin star restaurant, I'd be like, yeah, really? We could go somewhere a little cheaper. That'd be more fun. You say, let's go to this place that serves garbage in a bowl. I'd be like, yeah, couldn't we just go to like a mid place instead? That'd be better. So I have my biases, and at least I'm aware of them. My coworkers do make fun of it though, because I will not go to certain restaurants. On January 21st, so back in January 21st, Sukiya served miso soup, and it had a mouse in it. Now, again, multiple stories. Some stories said mouse, some stories said rat. Now, my image of rats is that they're very large. So I think this was a mouse, and it turns out the mouse had crawled into one of the bowls. So they have stacks of like miso bowls, these little wooden bowls usually. And then they grab one, fill it up with soup, and then serve it to the customer. A mouse had gone into that and died. And then the staff picked it up without checking, poured the miso soup in, obviously couldn't see the mouse anymore, and served it to the customer. Now, here's the thing. When they switched it from mouse to rat, that's to make the story more dramatic. It's more clickbaity, I think. But I think if it was a rat, it'd be too heavy. Like, you'd pick that up, you'd feel there was something already in there. So it had to be really small and really light, which makes me think it was a mouse. So that's, again, I have no proof one way or the other. But I think if you put a rat in a little tiny, very light wooden bowl, you'd be able to feel the weight of a rat in there. They served it to a customer. The customer, of course, went, "Dude, there's a mouse in my soup. I don't want this. This is disgusting." They closed that restaurant for 2 days, did an inspection, tried to find if there are any gaps or holes where the animals could get in. They tried to see if there was an infestation somewhere. They were given a clean bill of health. This seems like a one-off kind of random thing, and off they go. What made people angry wasn't so much, I guess it was, but it wasn't so much that there was a mouse served in the miso soup. It's that they did kind of try to keep it quiet. They didn't announce it on their website. It wasn't part of the news. It didn't get out. And then they made a statement on their website very quietly that there was an object in a miso soup bowl, and we apologize, and we're going to make sure that never happens again. We're going to train the staff better. All the sort of standard corporate things you have to say in Japan when there's a problem. The main complaint online is that they didn't say anything for at least 2 months before it got out. And so it seemed like they tried to brush over it, which, I'm sorry, if I was on the corporate side, that's probably exactly what I would do. I don't want people to find out that there was a mouse in the soup that we served to anybody. That's going to kill your business. So I get it. Even if it's not completely honest, I kind of understand what happened there. A university professor previously was forced to quit because of alleged sexual misconduct with a student. Now, they were found to be laying down, which was a very weird way to put it. So I'm assuming not actually having sex, but laying down together in one of the labs in the university. So maybe laying down and hugging, laying down and just like taking a nap. I don't know. I think if they were having sex, they would have been more clear about it. So they were very specific about laying down in the lab, because I saw about 3 versions of this story. The teacher was forced to quit because, of course, it's inappropriate conduct between a teacher and a student. So I actually think that was pretty reasonable. Then they found out later the teacher had tried to defend themselves by saying, well, I was actually being blackmailed. The student had said, you have to do these things that I want you to do, or I will send messages to the administration and I will get you fired. So basically, you do sexual misconduct with me, or I'm going to accuse you of sexual misconduct. So he was in a situation where, like, rock and a hard place, because what are you going to do? There's no options. What the student actually did, this was very weird, to be honest. So the student had blackmailed the professor and made a contract. And the contract included you have to hug and lie together with me once a month. So once every month, you have to lay down with me in the lab, because this is where all this was happening. So once a month. Okay, the weird part on my side is I was like, that's not very often. Like just lay down together and hug once a month. Maybe, I don't know. Then go on a date outdoors every 2 months. Now, this was in writing, and then the student made the teacher sign it so that, which is essentially saying, I am going to if you don't do these things, I'm going to blackmail you. Here's a contract. Please sign it. So that was the weird part of this, is that the teacher actually, in a way, had the proof that they were being blackmailed from the beginning when they had a contract, a physical piece of paper they had to sign. I'm wondering, though, if the student took the contract back or how they found the contract. But the contract came out that had these stipulations of hugging and laying together and going on a date every 2 months. And again, a date every 2 months is not very often. I would honestly, okay, if I was going to bother blackmailing someone, I'd get something out of it. I'd be like, every single week we go on a date, or every 2 weeks. Depends how much. It's a university professor. They got weekends off and they got money. And then laying in the place, I wouldn't want to do it in the lab. I would go somewhere else. Or maybe that's what got the student off, was doing it in the laboratory where they're not supposed to do it. The risk of getting caught. The professor tried to break it off, has text messages where he sent to the student, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I think this is inappropriate. I think this is wrong. The student then returned with, be my slave forever. So that shows you kind of like the difference in psychology they have going on with this student who is blackmailing the teacher, again, through commit sexual misconduct with me or I will accuse you of sexual misconduct. The professor, they haven't said that whether or not the professor is going to get their job back, because I actually think if the professor could have had a little more of a backbone in this one and actually gone to the administration and said, this student's trying to blackmail me. Here's the contract they tried to make and they wanted me to sign, which I signed, but it's not, of course, not like legally. You can't legally, I've lost the word, not legally applicable. This is it. We got to the last story. My brain just shut off. Just done. It's not legally enforceable. Legally binding. Thank you, the show. So we got two appropriate ones. My brain just kicked in right as you were typing that, I assume. It's not legally binding. It's not legally enforceable, this contract to force me to commit sexual misconduct. He could have taken that to the administration and said, this student's trying to do this. Let's put a camera in to prove it. Like, if you want more proof, we could actually do it, because we know the student wants to do this laying down thing in the classroom. We could have the student come in and say, like, I don't want to lay down. The student then will say something inappropriate, like, you have to, you're my slave, whatever. But yeah, that last message, be my slave forever. We don't know if the teacher's going to get their job back, but they are getting their unpaid wages.